Hi, it's Jim Brown with the illustrations for Chapter 7 of Among the Multihulls, 7 Minutes. So we sailed away from home in our scrimshaw, headed south for Mexico. It was 1972. And all of us, especially Joanna, were really ready to go. But it didn't take us long to learn that life on board with two sub-teenage boys was not going to be especially restful. Stephen took to riding on the lee float bow, much to the consternation of his mother, and every now and then, of course, he would get rammed through a wave. But he always hung on. And here's that bit with Russell hot-dogging the dinghy back and forth behind the boat. She is anchored in a strong tidal current, and by playing the centerboard against the rudder with a lateral tow line, he could really rip back and forth, of course causing Scrimshaw to really yaw on her anchor. And when we finally made it down into tropical Mexico, it was glorious. Finally, Joanna was getting to experience something of what she had missed on our trip in the little Juana some 13 years before. And still there was that wonderful familial empathy from the local Mexicans. Because we were a family, we were received as family. But now, of course, we had more laundry to do. And this is one of my favorite pictures of Joanna. You know, another cup of coffee while stomping on the laundry in a bathing suit in the dinghy. We stopped in almost every harbor town on the western seaboard, and the boys would always hit the beach immediately to check out the local scene. Stephen was especially good at hooking up with the local kids. In this view you can see him in the background with his arms crossed like the older Mexican boy beside him, getting in on the action. And this was even before he had much Spanish. Russell just loved to play around the water, and yes, we carried a surfboard which the boys used for commuting to shore so as not to leave Mom and Dad stranded on board without a dinghy. And yep, that's me, plopped on a sail bag up on the bow underneath the spinnaker, reading my own construction manual, which of course was the book that allowed us to get away. Well, let's have a look at Scrimshaw herself, the vessel in which this family cruising was happening. Here she is hauled out in San Diego by crane and sitting in a proper cradle for a multi-hull that holds her up under the wings and leaves all bottoms exposed for maintenance. Well, this is how she looked when she was brand new, a stock Sea Runner 31 trimaran, which I built from my own plans, and there were at least 100 of them built by owner-builders in the 60s and 70s. Note that she has open wings with netting and the A-frame cross beams, which allowed her to be taken apart for transport. On her bow, note the two hanked-on headsails for her cutter rig, and on the stern a transom-hung rudder with the wind vane self-steering and our tiny little 4-horsepower outboard motor. Her cockpit has two companion hatches. The one at the top leads aft into the stern castle, and the one down by the mast leads forward into the forward cabin. So now let's go down below and have a look around. We're up in the head here, looking aft through what we call our dressing room, through the forward sleeping cabin and the cockpit into the stern castle. The dressing room is allowed to have its controlled state of squalor. There looks forward into the head and shower compartment, and the dressing room contains a bunch of bins in the wings for adequate stowage. The forward sleeping cabin has sitting headroom in these quarter berths, and the feet of the quarter berths go down underneath the cockpit seats. This was the kids' cabin. Looking the other way now, from the stern castle, through the galley and the cockpit into the kids' cabin. Looking down from here, we can see the cavernous stowage underneath the cockpit and the head of the convertible double stern castle bunk. This was grown-up space, fairly private from the kids, but it serves double duty. Note that on each side of the bunk, the Sterncastle seats are folded up. But the seats fold down, the bunk slides aft, and the table slides out like a giant breadboard to make a delightful dinette where one sits with eye level at window level, with windows on all three sides, and the giant Sterncastle window facing aft opens wide. This dinette will seat 4 persons. It's tight, but with that back window open, it's a great place to navigate. Here's Joanna in the galley serving up yet another batch of pancakes for our hungry boys. There are galley counters on both sides of the vessels. Here the sink on starboard with both fresh and salt water pumped to the sink, plus plenty of storage around and under and behind. Also a couple of drawers for utensils, and on port a 2-burner propane stove, again with plenty of storage around, behind, and under the galley counters on both sides of the vessel. And last but not least, here's our ship identification number for the Panama Canal. And here's me in the mirror shooting this little spiel from Sail magazine, which included Scrimshaw among the 100 greatest sailing yachts in America. She was very pleased with that acknowledgement. For almost 40 years now, we've watched the wake run out from behind our Sterncastle window. And the ways in which this old boat has shaped our lives is the story of the next 4 chapters, with Chapter 8 coming up, and we hope you'll come along. Fair wind.